Fay Goldstein, welcome to Manufacturing Happy Hour here at the A3 Business Forum.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to start off with the typical Manufacturing Happy Hour question. How do you describe Bardin as if you're having a drink with someone?
Putting an application engineer in the pocket of every salesperson.
So this is the way I've heard it described as it's AI agents for industrial technical sales. Now, if you could, paint the picture of what that looks like? You described it as having that type of person in your pocket, but take this a step further. Paint a picture of a scenario for us.
All right, so you are a technical sales rep that you're getting from a customer, not just, hey, I need this specific sensor or this specific motor or this specific drive. What you're actually getting from them is an application. Hey, I've got this specific use case in this very specific scenario with this very specific industry in this very specific location with a very specific manufacturing plant with a very specific other sensor connected to it, a very specific Fanuc robot arm and a very specific Siemens PLC. What do I need in order to accomplish this very, very niche application with one of your products, or if you're speaking to an integrator, one of the many options that you have? And then you start going down a rabbit hole, or these sales guys go down a rabbit hole of checking hundreds of pages of documentation, going through a 600 million potential parametric search to try to find through a configurator exactly what is the variant or what is the configuration they need. And the loop goes back and forth because then they got to ask more questions and then come back and more back and come back. And our goal is to tighten that and to shorten that really complex process to make it more efficient.
I think when you look at deploying automation, one of the biggest struggles companies face is time to market. Time to market, time to deployment. That's why a lot of automation gets stuck. Is that one of the big benefits that you guys are seeing is not only providing a solution to answer questions quicker, but also deploy that automation sooner?
I think it's interesting. I had just really did a deep dive into, let's say, like those humanoids that we all saw at CES, right? And it's interesting because you have all of these incredible opportunities, and then people forget that there's someone sitting there, a human behind the humanoid, actually spending time saying, okay, well, what does my customer actually need? What is the user of this humanoid in the end of the day? What's that very specific niche use case that they need? And then you've got humans configuring the humanoid in order to make sure that happens. And so I think until you get to speed up all of that process and you get to speed up, okay, we actually now can optimize on the configuration and thinking about how do we get this shit done? Sorry, am I allowed to curse on this?
Yeah,
you're A-okay.
You're in a happy hour.
How do we get that done? Then you are actually not optimizing that much. And so I think it's not only just getting it to market, it's getting it to what your customer actually will find useful once it's in their hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One thing we've covered here at the A3 Forum, Fay, I know you asked a great question at the end of this session, but Google was talking about AI applications, talking about collaboration with artificial intelligence, talking about agency, which, as I understand it, is a way of describing people have agency or can have more agency, more fulfillment in their work, if you will, when they're truly leveraging artificial intelligence in a collaborative fashion that makes them more productive, but puts the human at the center of that activity. Would you mind sharing some of your thoughts on that concept of how artificial intelligence can bring more agency to people in our industry doing their work?
I think Google is an incredible company. I think the way that they're building their AI, both as it being a model, they're building the models, they're building also all the ability to have all the data as well, but they're also building the ability for folks to build their own agents is really, really powerful. But I believe that when we're speaking about agency, it comes up to a point of unless you're building in the interfaces and the workflows that folks are already used to, you're going to be losing a lot of people to the fear of this is freaking complicated. And so when I'm looking at how we're building AI, I kind of have this slogan that I tell myself is I want to build something brilliant but boring. Meaning I want my interfaces to be almost feeling in the similar way, close enough to the existing kind of workflows that people are used to doing. So if there's some sort of questionnaire process that people are typically now going through in Excel in order to fill out all the parameters of this specific robot application, they're going through an Excel sheet, you're trying to say, okay, they need this load and this thing and this thing. Folks are used to doing it in that kind of format. Now, when we think about if we want to do a complete overhaul, there's all these folks that are saying, well, you can just speak into an AI and the AI will understand it. But in the end of the day, what I discovered through a lot of trial and error, actually, about building Bardin, is when you force someone to, even though you have unlimited opportunity of saying, well, you can write anything you want into the chatbot and it'll give you an answer, folks are not going to spend time really trying to articulate the prompt that they need to put in. So I think there is a lot of opportunity.
It's got to be simplified.
It's got to be simplified. And it's also not just got to be simplified in terms of like, hey, let me help you get there, but it also needs to be put into a way that people are used to working, whether it's feels like a form, but there's AI behind it, whether it feels like some sort of piece of documentation that they're dealing with, but there's AI behind it. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in that kind of world. And that's where agency comes. I could do what I've been doing, but now I'm freaking 10 times, 20 times, 50 times faster. But it still feels like me.
It's interesting. One of the things that I always hear is people are worried that AI will remove the tribal knowledge that has existed in manufacturing for generations. We'll know the answers, but we don't know why we got to those answers. What would you say to that in terms of how AI is helping solve a lot of problems right now we're facing in the industry, but will it create a longer problem in a generation?
Now, just to clarify, so you're saying that, yes, AI is a solution to tribal knowledge, but if it doesn't capture where that tribal knowledge came from.
And why that tribal knowledge exists. Like, if you can teach a kid to work a calculator, but unless they have the fundamentals of understanding why they're asking that calculator to do something, I feel a lot of it's lost.
So I think this is where the brilliance of what's called kind of human to AI interaction comes into play. If you think about it, the questions that folks are asking the AI, there is so much brilliance in what is the question that they're asking, right? And the way that they're pushing back if the AI gives them an answer that they're like, this is not exactly right. And they're either pushing back and then editing an answer or pushing back and saying, this is not exactly what I want. That human to AI interaction is really valuable. And the way I look at it, for example, and this is how we're kind of thinking about Bardin, is let's say you have a customer RFQ, you've got a question that they're asking, you've got a customer troubleshooting question, historical, let's say, or you've done it in the past. And then you've got the answer, you've got the proposal that you've sent them. The delta between the two of them, that's where the tribal knowledge lives. What did they ask us? And what did we end up giving them? That change there is where the value lies. And so if you're building AI as the way we are building it, to understand the delta and the missing link, and to understand and to learn from the questions that are being asked and the way those questions are being asked, you're then capturing that tribal knowledge, but you're also capturing and be able to transverse back to where it comes from. Now, we're building, and this I'm going to go into a little bit of technical jargon here, but if you build it in the way we're building it, which is not vector knowledge base, but we're building in a graph knowledge base, meaning kind of in the way a neural network works, and the way your brain works, is you've got all these different nodes of things. And then what you're finding in a graph knowledge base is you have the nodes, and then you have the edges that connects the nodes. So you've got your product, and you've got your customer application. Those edges between the nodes is where a lot of that knowledge sits, and you can do that if you build your AI baseline really correctly. You can find the magic in those nodes, and that's where the tribal knowledge lives, and you can transverse back. Where did we get to there? How did we get to there? And that's an opportunity you can have.
Fay, one of my last questions. As someone that is building an AI company for the manufacturing, for the industrial space right now, you're focused on the niche of sales, essentially. But what is your overall perspective of the appetite the industry has for these solutions right now, their willingness to really adopt them, not view it as a risk? I'd be curious to hear your take. What is the industry's reception to these technologies right now?
So it's interesting because I think there's actually been a really big shift over the last year and a half, I would say. You know, from the first time I started hearing really AI being discussed in the very broad sense was actually in a German, Hannover Messe, a massive German industrial company, trade show that they had there. And it was all about AI. And there was like these huge, massive posters and signs like AI powered this. And then I saw about a year later, now when I was recently at another trade show, that it's no longer about this like huge, massive excitement of like, we're going to move to AI. Now it's all about, okay, well, how the hell are we going to implement it? Because we know we're going to get there, but now let's actually talk about the implementation and how I'm going to actually do it and how I'm going to make it work, which I think is actually a really great transition, because it's not that it goes from a lot of excitement to, all right, the buzzword's over, let's move on. But it's a lot of excitement, and now it moves into like a little bit of a muted excitement, but a lot of like practicality.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think we're now at that stage of very practical questions. And I think as a founder, that's one of the interesting things that I'm dealing with right now is like, okay, I know that the buzz and I can do as many podcasts and talk about it is exciting. Now it's like, let's get to work. Let's actually get implementing this. Let's make sure it doesn't take too many folks from the company's side to actually have to sit and do more work to make something do less work for them.
Yeah.
And I think we're at a really good place to start talking about implementation.
So pragmatic, focused on implementation. Do you think this turns into one of those things where sometimes people try to spend too much time making it on their own versus looking for what would be an off-the-shelf solution, which I believe is it fair to characterize what you're bringing to the table as one of those, hey, I have an AI solution for the sales side of your operation?
I think that there is this very big question. It's with really any software. It's this question of build versus buy. And that build versus buy question essentially means I've got a huge AI internal team that I can actually build out all these my own agents. I can also maintain them. I can also update them. I can upgrade when the model changes. I can actually change the prompts in the RAG structure when I need to be able to do that. And I've got a team to do that. And so some of these massive enterprises, that's what they should be doing, honestly. They've got the team to be doing that. I believe that the power of buy, which is not necessarily that's buying off the shelf, it means buy expertise that is helping you make either their software work for you or actually buy something that actually is built for that specific use case. I think there's a lot of opportunity there because it's very focused on, hey, I need to get this done. And I think people get really excited about the build opportunities, and rightfully, they can build all these agents, they can do these things, and it's really fantastic. I think in about a year, a lot of those folks are going to be coming back to the companies that have build an expertise in a specific space and saying, okay, now I actually really want to be buying your solution. I think in the end of the day, when you look at across the room in these associations, the vision guys have genius engineers that in theory could be building motion. And the motion guys in theory have genius engineers that could be building your robotics. But in the end of the day, they're staying in their lane because that's their expertise. And I think we're going to come to that space of saying, I need to work with the companies that are focusing on what I need right now, that have an expertise in building AI solutions for application engineering and sales engineering. And I think we're going to be seeing that more and more, especially when it comes to the mid-market sections that they want to focus on the things that are making them money and the bottom line.
Yeah. Fay, I appreciate you taking us through the world of AI, largely through your lens that you've seen this industry so far and the way it's evolving. Folks, we'll be back for more interviews here at the A3 Forum very soon. Thanks, Fay.
Thank you.